I just bought this machine. This is a Samsung SE130 LC2. It's about 14 tons. So Samsung is kind of like an off-brand. You don't see too many of them anymore. And I wasn't really interested at first until I figured out what it came with. And that's this. Another machine. This is also a 130, but this is an LCM2. So it's a little bit bigger, but there's a lot of parts that interchange with it. This machine needs some work. I can use that machine for parts if I want, or I can fix it up. It needs a motor and some work on the final drives. And the work on the final drives is only because the owner took out some of the pieces just so that it would roll freely. But this is the main machine that I bought. I got that one with it. So I paid 20 grand for this. Right now it's got a 24-inch bucket, but it's still a half a yard because it's pretty deep. So it's like the size of an average skid steer scoop. It's a lot bigger than my other excavator, obviously. So this came all the way from Pennsylvania, both of them. This machine is not something that I bought for like a project. I wanted to put this to use immediately. So there's a few things that I need to fix on it, but overall this is ready to go on the job. So I'm going to use it for some stuff that I wanted to do around my property first, and then we'll see how the jobs pan out for the rest of the year. There's a few little things that I need to fix on it. It's not that big of a deal, but the fuel gauge doesn't work. Just reads empty all the time. This has a Cummins 4BT motor in it. It's a 3.9 liter. And so kind of the story behind this is the guy that I bought it from got both of these machines and both motors were bad, but one had a bad bottom and one had a bad top, so he took parts from that one and he put it into this motor and made this motor good. So you can see that doesn't have a motor, but there's a lot of other parts that I can use on this machine if I need to, but I don't really see anything that I need to use so far. So I'm really not sure what my plans are for that machine, but I would like to fix it up. It's a nice machine that's cheap, obviously, because I got it for nothing. And if I just put a few grand into it, maybe I can leave it somewhere, like the property up north in the Adirondacks. Or I have a few other things that I might want to do with it. But this machine's ready to go.
Hello.
The undercarriage is not too bad. I don't know really what to rate this, but I would say probably like, I don't know, 70% maybe. I checked all the rollers. They seem to be pretty good. It's kind of weird that an excavator has these lights on the back and a license plate spot right there. But I think the reason is because a lot of these excavators you would see having wheels. I think they made a lot more of the wheeled excavators than they did the tracked ones. And just so you guys know, Samsung is now owned by Volvo. And so this machine is very similar to a Volvo of this year. This is a 99. And so back in 99, they had Volvos that were made with a lot of the same parts, and they're very similar. This has about a 30-foot reach on it, extended all the way out, which is really nice. It's nice for loading up trucks. It's nice for ponds and things that you need to reach really far without having to move too much. So it would be neat to restore this machine, especially knowing how little the investment would be in it. I think I could get all the parts for this, like a used motor and some parts for the final drives and a few other things that it needs, a bucket. I could probably keep it under 10 grand and have this machine functional. So it's easy to get at this motor. All you have to do is take that counterweight off, and then you can easily get to this whole area, and it's really easy, and you have a lot of access with a lot of room to be able to put a new motor in. So maybe eventually I'll do a paint job on it, but I'm really not too worried about all that kind of stuff. A lot of my videos that you guys see, I buy something and then I fix it up and I have to do a lot of work to it, but this one doesn't really need that. So I'd like to just get right into using it. Bucket is kind of small, but it's still a lot faster than anything else I have. just got this bucket and it's 3 feet wide, but it's a little bit taller and it's a little bit longer that way. I think this holds about 1 yard. So the pins on it, they're 80 millimeter bosses, and this is only a 70 millimeter pin. But I figured this bucket only cost me $250. So I figured I could get some bushings and I could make some things work. So I have some ideas. This bucket's only 24 inches. Up here it's only 21 inches. But with the side cutters, it's like 24 inches. That's just not enough though. My small excavator has a 24-inch bucket. This one's obviously a lot deeper. This can probably hold about 3 times what my other machine can, but still, I'd like to be able to get 1 yard in the bucket. This is only a half a yard bucket. This bucket is off of a 200 size machine. It's off of a Cat 200 EL. It's a little bit older of a bucket, but for $250, I could scrap this thing and probably get that. So I got this pin out pretty easily. This pin is not coming out. I tried everything with my human strength, so here goes the machine strength. I got a wedge welded on to the bucket here, and then I got my truck here sitting with a piece of wood. I need that pin to go that way. I think once it clears this boss, then it shouldn't be so tight. I think what somebody did is welded this boss on here and they didn't get it line board, so it's probably not super straight. So let's see if this will work. Not enough power on that. I think it's because it doesn't have enough jolt to it. So what I think I'm going to try next is I'm going to take this pin out so that I can have the whole bucket on the ground. That way I can tip it over and I can try to get more force, maybe even use the excavator arm at that point. I've found out that really stubborn pins, sometimes if you can get a pipe wrench on one side of it, big pipe wrench, and you can turn it while you're pushing on it or pulling on it, then it helps a lot. It helps to get things moving. So I tried it on this pin, but it's so smooth that it wouldn't grip on it. I'm not really sure why. I've done that before on a pin. Maybe that pin is like super hard. I'm not sure, but this one, I already can see that I can get a bite right here. So all right, that came out pretty hard, but I got it, so it is what it is. Seems like there's a very thin bushing in there. I'll check those out before I put it back together. Okay, so the space that I have between here and here is about an inch, maybe an inch and an eighth bigger than what I have from here to here. So I was gonna just stack up a bunch of shims, but I think the better option is, try to do anyways, is I have this boss right here, and I'm gonna attempt to cut. I only have one of these, so I'm gonna attempt to cut it in half. This is about an inch and a quarter, so when you cut it, depending on what you're cutting it with, it should take out a little bit more than that, and then it should be just about perfect of what I need. I'm gonna attempt to cut this on the chop saw. So I'm thinking that if I put a pipe in here about the diameter of this and then do a couple tack welds on it, then that can give me something to steady this with so it doesn't go flying all over. And then I'll cut it in half and then I'll grind off the tack welds. So I just use this exhaust pipe. I think this is 2.5 inch OD, and it's a little bit loose in there, but I'm just gonna put some like shims in there and then weld it up. And this is just to hold this so that, because this is too small to put on a chop saw with your fingers or something, so this will give it a place where I can steady it while I'm cutting it. That's pretty impressive right there. That cut through that with no problem. It loosened up a little bit and it lost its angle, but you can see it's not too bad. The idea that I had behind this was I have 70mm pins and this bucket takes 80mm pins. So I got this 70 to 80 sleeve, or it's a bushing, I guess you could call it. You can see it's got grooves for the grease on the inside, but I don't really need that because these are all bosses, so they don't really need grease. It fits pretty snug in there, so I'm happy about that. I'm happy that I didn't have to like press it in too. So then this is the piece that I cut on the chop saw, and this was the outside of it, so I'm going to say that that's still straight and square. So what I was planning on doing was putting the pins through, putting the bucket on, putting these on as a shim for right now just to see how everything works, and then I would tack weld it on while everything's together, and then I can take it apart and weld it up good. You can see I got those grooves in there. Maybe I'll fill those in with weld. These bosses have a little bit of a lip on them. This one's sticking out pretty good. I already ground this one down, but this one needs some work still, so I'm going to grind that down flat. So I'm just putting this bushing in until it's flush right here. And then where that keeper pin hole is, I'm just going to notch out just like that. So this is a 70 by 80 by 80. The last number is the length of it. I also picked up this assortment of 70mm shims. So these are 0.5mm, these are 0.2mm, and these are 1mm. So I got hopefully whatever I need to take up the slack here as well as here too. pretty good. The only thing I'm a little bit worried about now is this bushing in here can slide out. So I think what I'm going to do is put a couple of tack welds on it so it doesn't do that. Same thing with this one. There's nothing stopping it from coming out. This other side is locked into here because it's behind this keeper pin, and it's on the other side. You can't go that way either, so that bushing can't move. Same thing on this one. You can see I got the spacer in there. Well, really that's not going to be a spacer for very long because I'm going to weld that onto there. And then on this side I put a couple shims because this piece was slightly smaller than the other one. I didn't get it exactly even when I cut it, but that's why I had the shims there. So I probably could get away with just using this as a shim on both sides. It probably wouldn't matter at all. But I think just to give it less of a fulcrum point or a leverage advantage, I think I'm gonna weld this to here, and in that way the force is transferred from here to here instead of from here all the way over to here. Because if you do that on both sides, that's a big fulcrum point, and the leverage is at a disadvantage of breaking the pin. So like I mentioned before, the fuel gauge doesn't work. It just always reads empty. So this moves, but I don't know if it sends any signal the way it should. This piece right here is all chewed up. I'm not really even sure what part of it that is. But the good thing is I have that other excavator, so let me go see if I can take that one off and see if it works. Alright, so here's the parts machine. Should have the same fuel sender. Well, at least this one appears to not have any damage to it. So let's go see if this works. Hopefully this works. Moment of truth, let's see it. Nope. Does not work. Alright, so the fuel sender didn't work. That didn't do anything. But I got the other dash or gauge cluster from the other machine, and it is working now. And this is actually with it off, but when you turn it back on, it gets up to about 1/4 of a tank, which is about what I have right now. It's really slow to get up there, but it does go. But the thing with this cluster is the RPM gauge doesn't work. So I'm going to change that. And then also the hour gauge reads 10,000 hours, 10,800. And I only had like, I think 6,800 on the other one. So I'm going to change that out too. And then I should have one good working dash. And if I ever get the other excavator going, it's probably not necessary to have all this stuff. That's kind of going to be a grunt machine. So this is the gauge cluster that I'm going to use. So now we can just slip this right out of here. so it's just not working. So here's the other one that is working from the original dash in here. See? Works good. So now let's put it in the dash. I'm kind of out in the field right now, so I don't really have a lot of tools, but you really don't need a lot for this. Now I should be able to just pull this out of here. So I got to take apart this harness in order to slip this through here. So I just got to take out these little prongs here. When I got done putting these bushings in, I just put some tack welds around the outside, and you can see they cracked. A lot of them cracked before I even got done welding, but I don't really care if they crack as long as it holds it in there. I don't really care. I'm welding 1.5 inch steel to 3/16 steel, so it's not exactly easy, but actually some of these did hold. But that's just so that bushing doesn't back out of there, and it's doing its job, so that's all I care about. So the next thing I want to do on this bucket is the teeth. I want to work on everything to do with it. I want to make sure that this is all good to go, like ready for a job. And you can see these shanks are pretty worn out. But I already have some parts on the way for this, and it's going to be a few days, so in the meantime I'm kind of anxious to see how this bucket works before I do a whole bunch of work onto it. So I'm just going to move some dirt in a few different ways just to kind of make sure that this bucket isn't like too big, or if the angle isn't right or something. So I have a bunch of these piles of dirt over here from another project that's going to be a near future video here. I'm not going to show the rest of it, but this is some of the excess dirt that I have, and I have some places that I want to use it. So what I'm going to do is back my dump truck up, and I'm going to load some of this dirt out, bring it around the corner there. So let's see how this bucket works out. I know that it's going to wear the shanks out by doing this, but I'm not going to use it for that long, and they're already really worn out, and I already have some new parts for that, so I'll show you what I'm going to do with that. But in the meantime, I'm really anxious to see how this bucket works out. So that bucket worked pretty well for loading that truck. I really kind of put it to the test because that stuff was really wet. But everything seems to be working good. The angles are good. I'm not limited to anything. The machine's not tipping over trying to pick it up. I've been wanting to get rid of this label for a little while, but I don't really want to repaint the whole thing. And I can't take that stuff off without scraping up everything. But I'm going to try anyways. I'm going to try to take it off the best I can. This actually seems to be working pretty good if you go slow with it. And you kind of turn the blade as you're going. I really don't want to damage the paint and have to do a new paint job on it. Although I could use it, I just don't think that's high on the priority list right now. The last thing I wanted to do to this bucket was put some new teeth on. And I knew that these adapters, or shanks as you would call them, are worn down, probably past to where you can use them again. So I called up, and I got the serial numbers off of this, and I called up Cat and I asked them which tooth it takes. And they said it takes a J350 style. They said it takes a 1U3352 tooth. So I got 5 teeth for this to see if I could maybe weld it back together, and like you can weld on the top of here to make up the slack. So I ordered those teeth and they're way too big. That's what it looks like. Look at the bucket compared to that tooth. So I don't know if that's what was supposed to be on here and then they changed out these adapters to something else. I don't really know, but I know that this is too big. And you can just see that the retainer pin hole is only about 5/8 of an inch, whereas this is like 7/8 of an inch. And plus, it's just missing like 3/4 of an inch of steel on it. So I think this is too big. So I think whoever put these shanks or adapters on here used different, maybe the next smaller size. So I thought the next smaller size was a J250, which would be a 1U3252. But then I realized that there's actually a size in between, and that's a J300, which I don't remember the number for the teeth on that, but it's a J300 style. So I think this is actually a J300 style. So I think this one's a little too big, this one's a little too small. But you know what? This one I'm going to make work because I spent a lot of money on the pieces for it. So rather than try to, because this is a little bit too big, it's too wide. The height is all right, but the width of it is not wide enough. So I could grind it down to make it work. But then there's not enough clearance in these retainer holes for it to still slide. So I'd have to drill these holes further, which that's like 1 1/8 hole. So I figured, forget that. So what I did is ordered with these teeth, I ordered on a weld-on style adapter. So they bevel it for you. And basically, you cut the old ones off and you weld it in, and you make just a whole bunch of passes on it. And that way, everything's back to normal with this. So this fits this J250 tooth that I have. See, so that's meant for that. So what I'm going to do is cut these off, weld these new ones on. If it doesn't work, then I'll be looking at replacing the adapters, which I was going to have to do anyways. So I don't really see this as a loss if it doesn't work out. I know this tooth is a little bit too small, this other one here, but I don't think it's terrible. We'll see when it's done. So I can't think of a better way to cut this, or any other way to cut this, than to use a bandsaw, because that's like 2 inches thick. So I got this portable bandsaw with a 10 TPI tooth blade. So let's see if that can cut through it. So this is what I got so far. Kind of ran out of discs for this last one, but got all these mounted on. They're pretty straight with each other. This one's sticking out just a hair, maybe like 1/4 of an inch. So that's kind of my first pass on each one. First full pass anyways. I didn't clean the bottom yet. I didn't clean the slag off, but you can see what it looks like on the top. Stick welder really gets some good penetration in there. It's gonna hold pretty good. So this is kind of like my third pass, I guess you could say. So probably another 3 passes on this side. Maybe 4 on this side. It's hard to see this side, but when I'm making this pass, I got the excavator like this. When I'm making the pass on the top of the teeth, I curl the bucket in. So each time I got to move it. Every time I make a pass, I got to move it again. All right, so I think I'm about done making passes on this. I have about 20 passes on the top here and probably like 16 or so on the bottom. The only reason it was different because it was just slightly a different angle, so one side had a little bit more of a gap than the other, but I'm very confident that these are going to hold up. With that many passes, there's just no way that this can't hold up. I know that I still have like what seems like a little bit left to fill in there, but I got 2 inches of solid weld around there, so I really don't think it's going anywhere. So I'm just going to put these teeth on and call it done for now. Came out pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's definitely reasonable. So I'm just going to try this out real quick. Now when I was loading out before, that was all loose dirt. I was just trying to see if the capacity of the bucket or the angle was going to be wrong, but now I want to dig into virgin ground and see how it does. I've been wanting a bigger excavator for a while, for at least a few years now. It's been kind of a goal that's been reaching the top of the list, and then it finally did. And to be honest with you, I like running an excavator better than anything else, better than any other piece of equipment. I mean, the dozer's fun, a loader, a skid steer, they're fun, but the excavator is kind of like where I'm really efficient at it. Whenever we get on a job and we're doing some excavating work, I'm always the one that's on the excavator. But now we can bring this to a job, and of course I'll be running that too. I just like the versatility of it. It's universal for so many different things. You have so much precision and control with an excavator. So this is kind of like the missing link for my company. So now I have it. So I'm going to be doing some more videos with this. I already did a few, and I'm putting this out now before I really do a lot more to it, because I've had it for a while and you guys haven't got to see it yet. So this will be your first opportunity. And then I already have some other projects that I filmed, and I'll be putting those out shortly. And I'm going to get a lot of use out of this machine. I already have got a lot of use out of it. I probably put 150 hours on since I got it, or more. And it's really nice. The controls are super sensitive, which I really like. I definitely wasn't trying to get an older machine with some big sticks on it. I definitely wanted some pilot controls. This was 20 grand, so in like a year you can make back that kind of money. But you can obviously charge a lot more for a bigger machine like this. And I do, for you guys that are wondering, I do have a trailer, a 15-ton trailer that I got, that I'm going to be fixing up pretty soon. And so I can't move this exactly yet by myself, but in the next few months I will be able to. So I'm sure you'll see this on some jobs. It's definitely not worth bringing on a lot of the jobs that I go on, but some of them I could have used this. Anything where you're there for like 3 or 4 days or more, it's probably helpful to bring a machine like this on, because then you can get it done a lot quicker. So for now, I guess this is it, and I'll see you on the next project with this machine.